All right, go.
For our Bible project, I chose Genesis as my book of the Bible. I go through what happened and all the big events, and actually the meaning of Genesis, and where Genesis is a part of the first 5 books of the Bible. It is the first book of the Bible, and the first 5 books are called the Pentateuch, and the Pentateuch was also known to the Hebrews as Moses' law. Even though some studies show nowadays, some people believe that that the first 5 books, that Genesis wasn't even written by Moses, because it was written anonymously, but we just assumed that it was Moses because it was called that. So it's traditionally credited to Moses and him. But there's a lot of cool things that happened, and I'm going to start with who wrote Genesis. Genesis was written anonymously, but is traditionally credited to Moses. Since Genesis all happened before Moses was born, we can't depict anything from his life in this book. Moses is credited with writing the first 5 books of the Bible, called the Pentateuch. It's also known as the Torah, but I'm not going to use that word because it sounds like it's other religions also use. I'm just going to be saying Pentateuch. But the meaning of the word Genesis, the Hebrew word is Bereshit, and it means in the beginning or in the beginning of, which is the first few words of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is it in Hebrew. The Greek word Genesis, the word Genesis was originated in Greek when it was translated. So it is a different word that they technically named it. It means origin or beginning or creation. That's their word in Hebrew. Why is Genesis important? Genesis is the first book of the Bible and thought to be written by Moses in the 6th to 5th century BC. Genesis tells a story of how God created the universe and everything in it out of chaos. Genesis is a book showing God's promise and covenants he made through generations. It also tells the history of the Israelites. It explains how the world was made, the beginning of sin and the first murder, the story of Noah, the reason why there are multiple languages, and Abraham and his descendants. This is Pentateuch in Hebrew and Torah in Hebrew. I'm going to be now doing my verse mapping and the verses. The first verse, Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 1 through 4 in American Standard Version. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was waste and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Genesis 1:4 is telling us how God made the heavens and the earth and the light and darkness. Now I'm going to be showing you the verse mapping and what the verse is talking about in a few of these words and giving you their description. The first word, beginning, the point in time or space in which something starts. Like in Genesis 1, how the world started and how we were it's how it started. And our second word, created. Created is a past tense, created, which the normal is create. And to bring something into existence, how God brought the world into existence.
Wow.
Our third word is heavens, the dwelling place of God, his people, and other angelic beings. There's a lot of terrifying angels in heaven with a lot of eyeballs that I learned during this. Our fourth phrase is waste and void. The Bible describes the initial state of the earth before God began the 6 days of creation, meaning without form and empty, or formless and void. Our fifth phrase is darkness was upon the face of the deep. Genesis describes the initial state of Earth as a chaotic, formless, and void expanse of water. Before God's creative acts brought order and light, he brought orderly light and separated it from the darkness. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Our sixth phrase, "Let there be light." God, in the act of creation, commands light into existence, marking the beginning of a world transitioning from darkness to illumination and order. And our seventh and last phrase is, "God divided the light from the darkness." The separation of light, which God declared good, from the pre-existing darkness. The world was dark before he changed it. And my second verse, Genesis 4:9, the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" This verse is asking Abel where his dead brother is, the one which he killed, and asking him to confess his sin of which he did. This is the first murder that happened, and a really sad one because it was his own brother. But our first phrase is, "Where is your brother Abel?" God asked Cain after he murders his brother Abel in Genesis 4:9, intended to prompt Cain and confront his actions and acknowledge his wrongdoing, not to gain information. God already knows what happened with Cain and Abel. He knows that he killed his brother, but he's just asking him to confess. He's not looking for information, asking him to tell what happened because he doesn't know. He does know. He just wants him to come clean. And our second phrase, "Am I my brother's keeper?" This today is actually a phrase people use and to give up responsibility. It's used in telling people that you are actually your family's keeper. You should take responsibility for them and keep them safe. It means it's talking about Cain denying responsibility for his brother's disappearance and knowing he's dead. He's telling it like he doesn't know what's happened and he is not responsible for what happened to him. Closing his heart to his brother, even though he should be upset and all that's very sad thing that happened. Cain kind of ends up getting cursed into wandering the earth, but whoever kills him will have double times the curse and be just sad for the rest of their life. But even though Cain is evil, it's still sad and to hear about him killing his brother. Their parents, Adam and Eve, the first people, I felt like they were most likely heartbroken to hear that their son killed their other, but they ended up having another one's death. But so they ended up having 2/3 of their children good and 1/3 evil. So those are pretty good odds, right? Yeah. Now I'm going to be talking about when was Genesis written? Like, if Moses actually did write Genesis, where did he write it? Since Genesis is thought to be written by Moses after the Exodus from Egypt, during the 40 years the people Israel wandered the desert. He wrote it during or after the leaving of Egypt and saving his people from slavery. But then again, it could have been a completely different person. Actually, some people think it was multiple people who wrote Genesis. Okay. And now I'm going to be talking about what actually happens during Genesis.
Okay.
Yes.
I said okay. Go.
Our first one is we're going to be talking about God the Father and his whole thing. He is the creator and ruler over everything, holy and good, righteous and brings order from chaos. He is loving and vengeful, made man in his image, blesses those who obey and punishes those who disobey. He's a forgiving and loving, I won't say man because he's not a man. His other part is, but he's not. He's a god. He's very nice and vengeful, and he
good.
Yeah, he is good. He does have certain what would you call it? Rules. Like you have to be able to confess that you actually did something for him to forgive you. Let's say standards. There's high standards for you to confess, which is a very hard thing to do. Yeah. But as if you do that and ask for forgiveness, he'll forgive you. And just confess your sins and believe in Jesus, and you have a one-way ticket to heaven.
Amen, sister.
And then I'm going to be talking about Adam and Eve. The first people created by God, made in God's image, walked with God in the Garden of Eden, tricked by Satan, disobeyed God by eating the fruit from the tree of evil, knowledge of good and evil, banished from the Garden of Eden. Sons were Cain and Abel and Seth. Cain killed Abel, like we heard about in Genesis 4:9. Him killing his brother and God trying to confront him. Then we have Noah, and God. He was a very nice, God-loving man. He still had sins, but he was a righteous, and God decided not to destroy him and his family. And God told him to make an ark out of cypress wood. And Noah brought 2 of every living creature on that ark to save them for the new world after the destruction of the flood that happened, the great flood. And actually, it has some cool history behind the flood, because a lot of cultures actually reflect on the flood actually being happened. Even though they don't believe in the Noah and Ark story, they still believe that actually happened. Like, I know in Japanese culture they have that. There's actually a lot of cool artworks on them, famous artworks. After Noah, there was Abraham. Abraham obeyed God, loved and praised God, blessed with a son at a very old age. God tested his obedience by sending him to kill his son, but he didn't want that. He was just wanting to see if he'd do it, because he asked. He passed. He didn't kill his son. His son grew old and had children. But yes, he loved his son, though, but he was willing to kill him for God, showing his loyalty and love for him. His son, Isaac, the son of Abraham, loved and praised God, even though he was told to be killed. He still loved him, and because it was just a test. He passed. Also, well, it wasn't a test for him, but yeah. He had twin sons, Esau and Jacob, who one of them ends up betraying him, sort of. Jacob, yeah, is our next person, Isaac's son. He took the blessing intended for his brother. They were twins, and his brother Esau was older than him, and so he was going to take the rights, everything, and the covenant that God made with Abraham and Noah. But it ended up being passed to Jacob because he took that. He tricked his brother into receiving the blessing, and ended up having 12 sons who became the 12 tribes of Israel. Which wow. Yes, yeah. His name ends up being changed to Israel, and one of his sons, their second youngest son, Joseph, he had 12 sons and 1 daughter. Before the 12th and the daughter were born, his beloved son Jacob, his 11 older brothers sold him into slavery. He was his stepbrothers. Jacob, or Israel, married the 2 sisters, loving one for her beauty, and worked on a farm for 7 years just to get with her, but her father deceived and tricked him into working another 7 years and marrying both of his daughters. His 11 stepbrothers were the older ones, and Jacob ended up having 4 wives. Only the one other one gave birth to a girl, but the one that he truly loved only bore 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. And he loved those sons. Some people think it's because he loved that wife more, or it could have just been that he got that son in his very old age, so that could be why. And his 11 older siblings were not very nice, because they saw that, and they were jealous of the love from their father. His 11 older brothers sold him into slavery falsely, and in slavery he was falsely accused of some not so good stuff, but none of that actually happened. But yeah, he was thrown into jail by his master, and he had a gift actually for interpreting dreams. Before any of that happened, he had a few dreams telling him that he would become the leader of some things, and his father and his brothers would bow down to him eventually. Well, I don't think his brothers saw that coming. Well, he was thrown into jail, had the gift for interpreting dreams and having those dreams. And once the Pharaoh heard about all this, he asked him to decipher his dreams, and he prophesied that there was going to be a great famine that would come over all of Egypt and kill many people in the path. And it was going to last for a few years, too. So that was just a sad thing to hear. But before any of that happened, he prophesied the great famine. And Pharaoh appointed him into second in command. But before all that, he put him in charge of stocking up all the grain and bread and all that stuff, so his nation and the Egyptians would actually have stuff to eat and not die of hunger and have a very painful, I assume, death. And the Israelites were also going to be fed in that, which Moses would end up saving from slavery from the Egyptians. And there's a lot of stuff that happened in Genesis. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of stories.
Many.
And a lot of promises and covenants that God made that he all kept and he's still keeping. He promised Abraham that he'd have as many descendants as the stars. So that's a lot. If you're able to count all those.
Right.
Well, that's how many sons he's gonna have. Well, and daughters, and descendants, and all that. And he made a covenant with Noah, promising that he wouldn't have a great flood ever again, and kill pretty much all the people on Earth. But Noah was able to save his family from that by believing in God and trusting him. And all that I just read, I have on my board. Also, I made a book about it with all cool images and the stories that have been made.
It's an amazing book.
It is a cool book. It's pretty.
Dang, Mom.
I had a lot of fun making this. It was a fun class, even though it was very stressful. Very stressful making. It was still a lot of fun. I